So first of all, Luiz Lima, I would like to say thank you to you to accept our invitation in the name of the Pool of Tarsus Spiritist Society in Vancouver, Canada. So it's a great pleasure to have you with us. As Rosanna mentioned before, I guess it's a very good way for us to learn for the Spiritists in US. We have more time in the North America to that, so we are really appreciate your time. I know that the time zone is a little bit different from you, but thank you so much for accepting our invitation. So tonight, Luis will talk about the aspects of divine justice. So, and before going through the lecture, I just would like to introduce our brother and friend. So Luiz Lima has begun his journey in Spiritism since 1990. As a serious researcher on the scientific aspect of Spiritism, Luiz has been facilitating the studies of how to bridge science and Spiritism in both languages, Portuguese and English. Mr. Lima is a renowned lecturer in the Spiritist movement and participates in local, national, and I believe international seminars as well, and events all year around. Luiz Lima holds a degree in electronic engineering, and he works in a computer network industry. So thank you so much for accepting our invitation again. So it's with you, Luiz. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm the one to thank for the opportunity to learn with you, because every time we speak, we are also learning. Yeah, tonight's talk is a little bit more on the, I would say, philosophical side. Let me share the screen with you here so you can follow what I'm saying. It's a little bit more philosophical. As we know, Spiritism is a philosophy. It's a great philosophy of life. Actually, if you take the first book, the first published book, the Spirit's book, and you open in its first page, any translation, any edition, anywhere, if you open the first page, above the title, Spirit's book, or whatever the title is in whatever language, there's a phrase right on top of the first page, and it says spiritualist philosophy. So it is essentially a philosophy. What is philosophy? It's something that makes us ask things all the time. I want to know this. And then once you get the answer, the next question comes right after it. And then this, and then it got the answer, then a third question, then it got the answer, then a fourth question, and it goes like that. By the way, our best philosophers are our children. They don't stop asking, never. And that's how they learn. That's part of the learning process. So Spiritism becomes a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful a body of knowledge, because we ask and we are, as we go along, we get all these answers. So I wanted to bring this topic to discuss with you. And it's a topic that most of us have a very hard time understanding and accepting. I would say more accepting than understanding. The challenge is more in accepting than understanding. Divine justice, okay? What's in it that makes it so hard for us to comprehend, accept, and follow, okay? So I'm gonna start with a question. You don't have to answer, obviously, but I'm gonna get this question up here, and just have it in mind. Think for about, I'm just going to be quiet for maybe 15, 20 seconds. Okay, so you can think about this question here. Here's the question. Was the crucifixion of Jesus something that was just and fair? And why? Look at the complexity of this. Because if your answer is, it was just and fair, how do you explain that? If you say it was not just and fair, then you're going straight against divine justice. So you see, there's a lot of philosophical elements that we have to bring into this equation to be able to grasp the meaning of this. Okay, that's what we're going to develop in the next hour or so here, trying to address this question. So we're going to go through a series of analysis and you know, pick up some information from Allan Kardec, from Jesus, and we're going to discuss this. So we are going to start in the year, our I would say case number one or example number one. We're going to start in 1857 here in the U.S. Okay, in 1857, something became the thing of the moment in those days. That was because of this man that you see the picture in on the screen, his image, Dred Scott. Briefly, he was a slave when slavery was still something allowed in certain states here in the US. Not all states were pro-slavery, but he was born a slave. He was a son of two slaves, so he was born a slave, and you know, he worked as a slave for several years, and then at a certain point he got sold. His owner sold him to another guy, and this new owner moved from one state to another. So he moved from one state that supported slavery to another state where slavery was illegal. So automatically, by law, Dred Scott would have been free or no longer a slave. He could still be working for the owner, but he wouldn't carry the title of a slave in the actual sense of the word. So anyway, to make it all easier, he moved around and around and around because the owners were moving around, and he actually lived in 6 different states. So at a certain point, he said, I want to apply for the American citizenship. Me and my wife, he wanted to get the American citizenship. So he goes to the proper government, group, and he applies for American citizenship. The answer comes back and he got denied. He was denied the American citizenship. But the way the law was at the time, for every person that voted against him, there were 9 votes. For every person that voted against him, they had to justify why. So they had to come out with a reason why he was granted or not the American citizenship. So you had to justify your vote, okay? So after this was done, a document was published with all these things and all the justification from all the 9 people who voted on this matter. And from this document, we extracted certain phrases. So the phrases that you are going to see here, they came straight out of these documents. It's not something that I'm, you know, they mentioned this, they mentioned that. No, it comes from the document. First phrase for us to analyze. Remember, this is philosophy, okay? A Negro is not a human person and is property of his owner. Number 2, a free Negro of the African race is not a citizen within the meaning of the Constitution of the USA. Number 3, regarded as being, Negroes are regarded as being an inferior order with no rights, which the white man was bound to respect, meaning they don't deserve respect from the white people. Number 4, those who believe slavery is wrong should simply refrain from having slaves. Number 5, a man has the right to do anything he wants with his property, including the slaves. And number 6, the Negro might justly and lawfully be reduced to slavery for his own benefit. This is 150 years ago. None of this would even apply today. But at the time when this whole thing came out, it was accepted as a normal thing. I mean, people would read these sentences, they would look at the outcome of his request, and they would say, well, obviously, so the whole society was generally in favor of this. And it was just a common thing. Like you and I are talking, you know, about sports and different things. It was just natural for the society. Can you believe that? If you go back and read these 6 things, it's absolutely awful. Absolutely awful. So society he wasn't granted the American citizenship, but that wasn't the point. The point is why these 6 phrases here justifying why he didn't deserve it. Now, 6 years later, 6 to 7 years later, America proclaimed the end of slavery. So you see, this man, Dred Scott, his case had a very heavy weight on when Abraham Lincoln ended slavery in this country here in the US because of him. So how can we think today in 2020, how can we think that something like this would be acceptable? Not that we don't have prejudice of any sort and racism, but we wouldn't get this far today. It's just not acceptable. And that's only 150 years ago. This is the year the Spirit's book was published. So you see how complicated this thing is. So at the time, this sentence was just. There was justice in 1857 when he received this. So obviously, there's something in our justice that does not align with divine justice, because this is not divine. This is human. So there are aspects in the divine justice that are not the same aspects that we use for justice. There are things in divine justice that are different from human justice, and that's exactly what we want to speak about this next hour or so. Number one, from this one case here, from Dred Scott, we got 3 elements that are different in divine justice and human justice. Number one, time. Time matters. When? 150 years ago, it was that way. In 2020, it isn't. And probably 3,000 years ago, it was different as well. For God, time is not a point. It just doesn't matter. For us, it does. So our justice considers time. It reads time. Okay? Our justice reads place. It recognizes place. For example, a certain type of crime committed in Canada, for example, might have an outcome completely different than the same crime exactly the same way in Brazil or in Israel or in China. So place matters. The place matters. And the third thing that we get from this outcome here is social status. If he wasn't a Negro, he was just a white person requesting at the time American citizenship, it would probably have a different outcome. So social status mattered. And it still does, by the way. So you see, there are, at least in this first case here that we are analyzing, 3 elements that put divine justice and human justice, that it sets them apart. That makes it very hard for us to comprehend divine justice, but that's just the beginning. These are only 3 elements. We're going to see a lot more. So let's take another case. For most of us who come from Brazil or have contacts with Brazilians, when we look at something like this, it's absolutely horrible. This is the biggest slum in the world, Rocinha, and it's in the city of Rio de Janeiro. This is a picture, one of the pictures from the slum. What you see here in the picture is towards the front of the picture is taken from the top of the Rocinha slum, showing all these beautiful and nice buildings in the back. Those buildings are where the most wealthy, the wealthiest people and the rich people, the artists and politicians, that's where they all live, in the country, not in the city, in the country. So that's a tremendous contrast. They are side by side, as you can see here in the picture, divided by a 4-lane avenue. If you look down, there's a 4-lane avenue, 2 lanes going, 2 lanes come back, and that's it. That's all that divides these two realities, okay? So let's look at this Rocinha slum. Let's take a peek in this thing. We have about 70,000 people living here, 69,161. That's the census. So let's roughly say 70,000 people is the population of Rocinha. And we go like, well, what does it mean? How do I compare to something that makes more sense to me? So here are some references for all of us. Vancouver, 631,000, okay? Seattle, which is not far for you guys, 608,000. New York, 8.1 million. So Rocinha is a lot smaller than any of these three cities, especially New York. It's 1/10 of the population of Vancouver and Seattle. Now, in the city, in the slum, the density of population, meaning people per square kilometer, in Rocinha, 48,000. Okay, what does it mean to me? I can't grasp this. So here's on your table. In Vancouver, 5,400, 5,500 basically. Seattle, 3,500. New York, 10,000, 11,000. Rocinha, 48,000. So it's almost 5 times more dense people per square kilometer, 5 times more than New York City. Not New York State, New York City. That's complicated. So it's like a can. So, you know, it's too many people per square kilometer. It's absolutely awful. And one image that became very interesting to look is this one here. It's basically the same picture, but the camera is way far behind. So we still see all those nice, you know, and neat buildings where the wealthiest people in the country, not the city, in the country are. And on the other side, you have all this Rocinha. Now, this picture here became something very famous. This is the boundary. This is one of the boundaries. So think about this. If you live on the left side of the picture, meaning you live in Rocinha, when you look out your window, what you see is this nice building with these people. They have their private pools, 1 per floor, the nicest thing. For the people living on the left side, do you think it's fair? Do you think they think it's fair? Probably not. I don't think anybody living in Rocinha looks at this and say, this is fair. They don't think it's fair. Now move to the other side. You live in one of those buildings. You live on, let's say, the 11th floor of the building on the right side. You look at your view, what do you see? Something nice and neat? No. You see Rocinha, the biggest slum in the world. Do you think it's fair? They don't think it's fair because they want the greatest view ever. They want the beach, they want the lakes and the trees, and they don't get that. So you see, it's unfair for both. Both of them think, I don't deserve this. Isn't that interesting? How do we reconcile this with divine justice? Because from the human justice point of view, it's wrong for both. You know, if I'm living on the left side, I'm revolt. If I'm living on the right side of the image, I'm revolt. It's not fair. It's just not fair from the human's point of view. So if this is fair for God, there is something in the divine justice that is different. The parameters used by God are not the same parameters that I use to produce my outcome in terms of justice. And here are 3 more parameters that we can take from here. Number 1, our justice, when I mean our is human justice, right? Our justice is fragmented, meaning not everybody thinks it's the same. We see the example right here. The people on the left think it's not just. The people on the right think it's not just. When you ask them why, the reasons are different. So human justice is all fragmented. Basically, every person has their own sense of justice with their own outcome for anything and everything they see. Number two that we take from here, revolt. How can you think something is just if, or God is just if you revolt? It's not, you see, things don't match here. By the way, Emmanuel tells us revolt is synonymous with incomprehension. When you revolt, it means you're not comprehending something. So stop revolting. Doesn't matter. It doesn't help anything. Stop. Let me see, what am I not comprehending? What am I missing here? So both people, people on both sides of this picture, they revolt. That's not God. That does not align with divine. Okay. Number three, our justice pends heavily to materialism. So I'm living at the left side here, and I look at the right and I say, these people got a lot of money. I want to be like them. So what they are, who they are, you know, their concerns, their problems, their spiritual development, that doesn't matter. Same for the people on the right side. They look at the left, and what they see is, I want the beautiful view. I want to view my beach. I want to view something nice and decent. I don't want to view this ugly thing. So, you know, we pend a lot for the materialism in our lives when it comes to justice. So none of these three things apply to divine justice. So we are up to 6 now, right? We saw time, place, social status, fragmentation, revolt, and materialism. 6 things that are very heavy when it comes to human justice. They have no influence whatsoever in divine justice. Okay? Are you following what I'm saying? Does it make sense to you so far? Okay. All right, so let's take another case. Case number 3. That's philosophy, right? Case number 3. We're going to talk a little bit about DNA exoneration. What is DNA exoneration? It is the possibility that somebody who has been convicted for whatever reason, it doesn't matter, somebody that has been convicted will undergo a DNA test, okay, to prove or disprove that they did or they didn't do what they have been convicted of. If it comes out, if the outcome is the DNA does not belong to the convicted person, they get free. They are, you know, out of jail. This is exoneration by DNA. In here, in the United States, exoneration by DNA became part of the legal system in 1989. I don't know in Canada when it was. It would be nice to find out. It would be nice to find out everything that I'm going to show here on this slide. It would be very nice to know the equivalent in Canada. So the first DNA exoneration occurred here in the US in 1989. So we got a few decades of this as embedded part of our legal system. So far, we've had 367 exonerations. That means in 367 cases since 1989, people were convicted, they were in jail, they had been arrested, they were in jail, and actually they had not committed the crime they were accused of. And that came to be proved later on through DNA, and these people actually got free and, you know, were out of prison. Now let's think about this number, 367. Let's analyze this number. Again, this is for the US legal justice system, okay? From the point the guy is arrested, or the person is arrested, to the point that this person gets exonerated by DNA, there's an average of 14 years. So you're still 14 years in jail for something you didn't do until it gets proved that you didn't do. Is it fair and just? It's becoming complicated, right? Here's some more. 28% of these cases of exoneration, okay, these people went to jail because they told the police, yes, I did it, but they didn't. They were forced to produce a false confession because their families were being threatened, they themselves were being threatened. So they rather, instead of being assassinated or had their sons and daughters and family, you know, being assassinated or suffering, they have decided, I'm going to go to jail, at least my family doesn't get touched. So in 103 cases, or 28% of these cases, they were not criminals. You see how wrong the system is to get to this point? Of the 367 exonerations by DNA, 21 people were already in the death row. They had been convicted and they had been, you know, offered lawyers and they had been assigned to the death row. 21 cases out of 367. They were gonna die for something they had no idea what it was because they didn't do it. Almost 50% of these cases involve forensic mistakes. Okay, forensic mistakes, we have two possibilities here. One is non-intentional mistake. That means police and detectives, whoever is investigating the cases, they got evidence here and there and there was a mistake. Somebody overlooked something or didn't click two things, so there was a mistake. Okay, now there's also a voluntary mistake in which you decide, well, if I put this guy in jail, you know, I'm okay because then I solved the case. That's sad. That's sad. So 50% of these cases, okay, have to do with forensic mistakes. Now, this is probably the worst of all. 70% of these cases had a situation where the visual ID produced the wrong conviction. What is that? Visual ID is, we see this a lot in the movies in Hollywood. You know, you put let's say you have a suspect and you get, let's say, 5 or 6 other people looking somehow similar to that, looking visually. You put them in a against a wall and against you know, glass, and the person on the other side of the glass, they don't see you, but you see them. And you meaning the victim. It's not somebody else, it's the victim. So the victim is going to look at those, let's say 7 people, and you're going to say, yes, it was that one. That's called visual ID. In 300, out of these 367 exonerations, 254 had been wrongly ID'd. Who IDs these people? The victim. How come the victim IDs the wrong person? The answer is very simple. It's revolting, but it's very simple. I'm a victim, and I'm really, you know, I don't accept what happened to me. I'm really, you know, getting aggravated. The minute I find somebody, it doesn't matter who it is, the minute I find somebody to go to jail, I feel, in quotes, in peace. That's when the trouble starts, because you think you're going to be in peace by doing this. That's when the trouble is going to start. That's when life is going to turn into a turmoil of trouble and problems. But that's what they do. These people ID, so they feel okay and good. Oh, okay, I finally got this person in jail. This person did this to me. It didn't. And you know, because you ID'd the wrong person. It's just a way of ending your suffering. That's what you think. It's similar to the people who commit suicides. They think they're going to end their suffering. Do you think God uses any of these things written in these 5 red lines here? Is this something that God uses to produce his justice? No way. Never. And then we have some interesting cases. One of these cases happened here in the US. Cases about DNA exoneration. That's this particular case took place in 1984 with this girl here. This is actually this girl in 1984, like a month before what happened to her, Jennifer Thompson. So she was living in a house. Somebody broke in the middle of the night, and she was raped. Now, this is told by her. Okay, this is not somebody guessing. This is her telling us that she was very cold, and she said, I will need to put this guy in jail. This is while this thing is happening. Okay, she said, I need to put this guy in jail. For me to be able to do this properly, I need to look at every single detail in his face, maybe his teeth, his hair, the way he walks, the way he talks, absolutely everything. So I need to have to collect visually, looking and, with her 5 senses, as much information as she can to produce, to go back to the police and tell them this is what this guy is like. That's what she did. And we are told by her, okay? This is what she did. So she goes to the police and they produce, a sketch of the perpetrator. To this day, you see, this happened in 1984. We are in 2020. To this day, police in the US never, ever had a so perfect sketch of a criminal. It was absolutely perfect. So 2 days later, they arrested the guy. So this the guy they arrested, Ronald Cotton. So he was accused of breaking in her house in the middle of the night, raping her, and he was taken to jail. Let me show you the actual sketch that she produced. This is the actual sketch. So if you look at both, it's similar. Yes, it is, right? So he was put in jail. And then he said, I didn't do this. He said to his father, I didn't do this. I don't know who this woman is. I wasn't even in the area at the time. He had alibis. They didn't take any alibis. So he was taken into custody and he was taken into visual ID. So he was one of the 7 men standing behind the glass. Jennifer looks through the glass and tells, the police, that's him, number 5, right there. And they go like, are you absolutely sure? It is him, number 5. So they arrested number 5, Ronald Cotton. He goes to jail. That's 1984. And he kind of, how am I going to get out of here? I didn't do this thing. So he appealed 4 times between 1984 and 1990. He got his request denied 4 times. They wouldn't even consider new evidence, nothing like this. So when you go to prison, you are required to do some sort of work. You got to pick a place to work, cleaning bathrooms or doing something. So he decided he wanted to be in the kitchen, so cooking. So he decided to be one of the, if you would say, a line cook, okay? And in the kitchen, you have visual contact with absolutely everybody, because everybody goes to the kitchen at lunch and dinner, with their plates in hand, pass through, the cooks and get their meal. So he got to see every single face in the prison. And at times, people would go to him and call him Bobby. And he said, but why are people calling me Bobby? And then he starts asking these people who were calling him Bobby. And they would say, no, you're Bobby. And then he goes like, there's somebody here. This is what he thought. There's somebody here by the name Bobby who might be very similar to the way I look. So he starts, finding who Bobby is, and he finds Bobby. This is Bobby Pohl. So he finds Bobby Pohl, and then he kind of became friends of Bobby Pohl to find out why Bobby Pohl was in prison. And then Bobby Paul said he had been raping women. So Ronald Cotton, who was innocent, went back to his lawyers and he said, I got this. What can we do? His lawyer says, nothing. You've been denied 4 times. You can't do anything else. And if you try a 5th time, that's your last chance. And then anything else you try after a 5th time, if you fail, that's it. No more opportunity. So he's there, he's in jail, 10 years go by, and by the year actually 1990, they were watching TV in the prison, okay, because they had TVs, and he saw a white car, a Ford Bronco, being chased in the highways in California, and he started getting interested in the thing. So they started to follow that, and they came to be O.J. Simpson. Okay, so O.J. Simpson got arrested, and he was actually tested for DNA. Then Ronald Cotton said, well, there is such a thing as DNA exoneration. I didn't even know. You see, he was arrested in 1984. DNA exoneration starts in 1989. So he got arrested. He got interested in, I want to do DNA test evidence. And his lawyer said, if you get convicted, that's it. He said, I want to do DNA because it wasn't me. So they do DNA test and it wasn't him, of course. So he was exonerated, DNA exonerated. He got $10,000 from the government to help him get start his life, and he got freed. Now, that's the interesting part. When he got out of jail, he went to his father and he said, Dad, I want to know this woman. And then his dad said, why don't you leave this thing in the past? He said, no, I'm not going to be aggressive. And I just want to look at her. That's all. Because I don't know her. I didn't do anything. So can you imagine this woman on the day she read in the news she was out of jail? She couldn't sleep anymore. Because in her mind, what would she think? The first place this guy's going to go is to my house and he's going to kill me. That's a natural way of thinking, right? So she was in total panic. She couldn't sleep anymore. And she said, I'm not having a life anymore. So it's better just to meet with him, and see, go from there. So she agreed to meet with him. And then this is what she did. She rehearsed every possible situation in dialogue form. For example, if I say this is going to, if he says that, I'm going to respond this. If he says that, I'm going to respond this. So she had a whole script, lines and hundreds of lines of anything scripted in her head that she would tell depending on what he would say. So they agreed to meet in a church, just the two of them, of course, a bunch of policemen outside. So the agreement was she's going to go in first, and then the police is going to take him and let him go in alone. Police is not going to come into the church. So she is in, he comes in. He sits by her side, and she's going to start talking, and he says, no, don't say anything. I just want to look at you, and I want to say this: I forgive you, and I'm going to leave if you allow me to. You see, she had all these hundreds of lines in her script. He said the only thing she didn't have on the script. So when he said that, she dismantled mentally. She fell on the floor, dismantled. She couldn't think of what she was. She lost it completely. She didn't know what to do. From there, okay, they became friends. Their families have dinner together at least twice a month today. They started doing lectures together throughout this country here and in the world, speaking about, DNA exoneration, visual ID, all these things here that we use in our human justice, and not necessarily they are right. So they are huge advocates for a better human justice. They wrote a book called Picking Cotton, which has a kind of double meaning there. And the book tells the story. It's a sad story. It's one of these necessary evils. But you see, there's something in divine justice that is not part of our justice, because none of that would have helped, would have happened if divine justice was in charge. But it wasn't. It was us, human justice. Here's another example. Archie Williams. I don't know if you know him. This guy was in jail for only 37 years for something that he didn't do. He was exonerated because of DNA evidence. So when he was convicted without the possibility for parole, meaning no appeal. You can't appeal. You're not allowed to. And he was accused of aggravated rape and murder, which he didn't do. So he spent 37 years in prison, and he was exonerated last year after 37 years in prison. This guy became very famous because once he was out of prison, he went to the TV here in the US to a very well-known show, America's Got Talent, to sing a song. Okay, and so he sang the song beautifully, by the way. And the song was a song by Elton John called Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. And before he sang, the judges, they asked him, who are you? What are you doing? So he said, I've been in jail for 37 years for something I didn't commit. And then he goes in and sings the song beautifully. After all of this, he was on an interview, and this is what he said. A couple of things he said, they're very interesting. I'm a fan of Elton John. Now look at what he said. His songs always moved me. This particular song, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, became spiritual to me. So he used to listen to that song in jail. It was given to me by the Spirit. This is a Baptist guy who knows nothing about spirit and spiritism and spirituality with the depth that we know. I used to listen to this song in prison, and the words would just come back up whenever it was needed. So you see, it was an element to get him going, and he goes even further, and he says, freedom is of the mind. I went to prison, but I never let my mind go to prison. His body was in prison, not his mind, because of course, he wasn't guilty of anything. When you're faced with dark times, what I would do is pray and sing. This is how I got peace. So he said, this guy is way above human justice. He's way up there. He's not revolting. He's not doing anything like this. So these exoneration by DNA cases, right, led our society here to create a website, very famous website. It's called the Innocence Project. That's the project that helped him to get out of jail. There's a website. It's a beautiful thing. So what they do is they help people that are not guilty to have the opportunity to undergo DNA testing for a better justice, and not just plain stupid human justice. From these cases, we take more elements. There are aspects in our in our justice, not in divine justice. Justice is fallible. It fails, and it fails big time. Not divine justice, though. We are very prone to do justice with our own hands and based on revenge. So later on, the question was, how did this guy went to jail for 37 years without doing anything? And then they went to find evidence, and the evidence was the police officer at the time asked the person, the victim, to ID him. The person did not ID him. He said, it's not him. And the police officer said, it's a small city in Louisiana, a small town in Louisiana. So police officer said, if you don't do this, we're going to have an unsolved case that's going to be bad for our careers. So you got to put him in jail. So we got the case solved and everybody's okay. So they bought her out, if you will. They paid her money to put this guy in jail for only 37 years. How divine is this? None. You see, we got 9 elements already that are heavily influential on human justice. Not a single one of them applies to divine justice. I want you to see this short video, very short, few seconds. What does it look like? For me, it looks like this guy is trying to maybe rob the gentleman, maybe take his, his briefcase. That's what it looks like to me. Let's see a little bit more of the video, beginning from an earlier time. So you see the guy comes from really far. He's on the street. He comes from really far, all the way to the end of the street to reach the gentleman. And he, from my understanding, this guy's a criminal. He's trying to rob the gentleman. So let's take a final look at this video, and I'm going to be in silence. Now I'm going to speak. So sad that I condemned the guy. So you see, we don't have the whole picture at times. That's what I said in the beginning. Our justice is fragmented. We have pieces. We don't have the whole picture. After seeing this last video, we should all be ashamed of being ever thought that the guy was doing something wrong when he was doing exactly the other way around. He was doing something good, great. He was saving the gentleman's life instead of us thinking that he was robbing the guy or trying to steal his money or something. You see how fragmented and poor our justice is. So here are some more elements. Our justice is very personal because it's based on revenge. It's me. It's punctual. I look at that nick of time and I look at that minute of expressed cruelty. I don't look at a wider window of time. For divine justice, these are not elements that are used. These are not parameters that are present in divine justice. So it becomes incompatible with our justice. Very different. So if you think about different lifetimes, that's what we are actually. We're here in a present lifetime, but we have been incarnated and discarnated several times. So let's say that I'm on the second blue incarnated life, and right here on this day, today, that's where the red line is, I commit a crime, whatever crime, okay? Human justice is going to look at the point that it's going to pinpoint, this is the day and time that it happened, and the outcome comes from there. Divine justice produces an outcome based on history, based on lifetimes. And here's the main element of differentiation, reincarnation. You will never have reincarnation as an element of human justice. It's just not going to happen. So you see, there are different things in divine justice and human justice. Just think about this. From God, we know from the Spirit's book that we have spiritual principle. God creates two things, spiritual principle and material principle. We're not going to go into many details because we need to concentrate on divine justice. This spiritual principle is going to develop. It becomes intelligent principle. It becomes later on what we call the spirit, which produces a perispirit, which has a physical body here on earth. So what we have is several layers here. We have several layers. Human justice looks at one of these layers, just one. the layer of the physical body. How can human justice address spirit, perispirit, God? How can I complain up there to God that he's not doing his job right, that he's being unjust, if my only perception is at the physical body level? I'm too far from being able to, use the other elements, the other layers actually, to produce a better outcome on judging and justice. I can't do this, not at all. Let's just try to summarize everything that we said in a form of comparison. So we're going to compare human justice and divine justice. What's the range of human justice? It's very limited. It's, first of all, me, myself. Somebody did something to me. That's all that matters. I don't care about my neighbor. I care about me. I suffered this thing. I'm going to produce justice. Sometimes it's tribal, so it's a small group of people. Sometimes it's just social, a small piece of society, country, etc. There's nothing like this. That's fragmented. There's nothing like this in divine justice. It's universal. It's one law for every single being. Our human justice uses the references written by us. We write the reference. You see, for you to say something is right or wrong, you have to have a reference. You see, if I'm using yellow shirt, as you can see. If I ask you, is yellow shirt right or wrong? You're going to have to ask me, well, show me the reference. If the reference says blue shirt is right, then I'm wrong. You see, for me to say something is right or wrong, it depends on a reference. When I am that reference, which is what human justice does, it becomes biased. It becomes a problem. Divine justice does not look into that. It looks into the main law of all justice, love, and charity. It's not the same as us. Our judgments, our human justice is based on revenge. Divine justice is based on universal balance. You do something here, you're going to have to offset there in a way. You kill people here, maybe in our next life, you're not going to be killed necessarily, but you're going to save lives. You took lives on here, you're going to save lives there. So you're going to be a doctor, a nurse, whatever. Our justice is fragmented, full of nuances, and we'll adjust here and there, we'll close our eyes for this and for that. Human justice is different. Divine justice is comprehensive. It's one for all, no exceptions. Our human justice suffers the influences of aspects such as, like I said before, time, culture, social status, place. Divine justice takes in account one thing, responsibility. You did it, you're going to have to deal with that. We are responsible for what we did. Human justice is partial. He uses favoritism. Oh, I like this guy more than that guy. Oh, no, this guy lives on my block. So, this guy is the same profession that I am, so I'm going to give him a break. No such a thing in divine justice. It's impartial, one law for all. Everybody gets the same treatment. Human justice can be altered, can be adapted, can be corrected. Divine justice cannot. It's immutable and timeless. It's always been like that, will always be like that. Human justice can be negotiated. You can, let's talk about this. You committed a crime. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's see what we can do for you. No such a thing in divine justice. It's personal, not transferable. Okay, you cannot send somebody. You see, in divine justice, there's no visual ID that you can fool the police and send somebody else to jail. There's no such a thing. In human justice, the main purpose is re-education for material life, so you can get, the rest of your life. You can correct yourself for the rest of your physical life. Divine justice, correction, and re-education for spiritual life. We are immortal spirits for the incarnations to come. Human justice has a maximum penalty. For example, you go to death row or life in prison. You see, it will never have an outcome in our justice that is something like this. Here's the outcome. You're going to have life in prison, and the first 10 years of your next incarnation also in prison. There's no such a thing, because we are working at the physical level. Remember, human justice is at the physical level. Divine justice trespasses that. So obviously, it's going to have a different outcome. Human justice uses relative references. Here's an example. Let's go back in time a little bit. If you can remember the first cyber crime, somebody with a computer stole money from a bank account. So this first guy ever to do this, it's a brand new type of crime, never seen before. So we got the guy, now we got to give him a sentence. So let's just say, for easiness of thought, okay, this is philosophy only. This is not legal justice. Let's just say that the first guy we caught is, well, he stole $1 million. He's going to spend 1 year in jail. And then later on, we got a second guy. And this second guy, instead of stealing $1 million, he stole $10 million. So our justice is like this. Well, we gave 1 year to the guy who took $1 million. We're going to give 10 years to the guy who took $10 million. You see, for the second guy, we are using a relative reference, something that we had previously before. And who established that first sentence? We did. It didn't come from God. We did. You see, in divine justice, the references are absolute. You do, you're going to have to deal with that, period. Our human justice is punctual. Like we just said, we just saw on the picture now. We look at the time it occurred, and we look at the punctual on that event, on that day and time. Divine justice takes in consideration everything, to each according to their deeds, which is a completely different thing. Our justice is based on fragmented truth, because we don't have the whole picture. We just saw the guy that we thought he was robbing the gentleman. In theory, he was saving the guy. So it's one of those things. Divine justice is based on absolute truth, nothing fragmented, okay? Our justice, we spoke about that, clings to materialism. Divine justice is cosmic. There is no, you have a better pool than I do. No such a thing. It's cosmic. In human justice, we have a third-party judge. For example, I commit a crime, so I get convicted. I go to jail, then I go to court to face whatever my sentence is going to be. In court, okay, you have me, which are supposedly, a criminal. You have the victim, and you have a third party, who is the judge. And this judge does not know any of us. He does not know the victim. He does not know me. And he's the one who's going to sign, or designate how I'm going to pay for it. So in human justice, the judge is outsourced. In divine justice, the judge is the offender. Can you imagine in our justice, when you are put on trial, okay, the judge comes to me, criminal, and says, Luis, you've been accused of this, this, and this, and this. This is a crime according to our law. Please give us the sentence that you think you are supposed to be, complying to. It would be chaotic. It wouldn't work. But that's how it is in human justice. It's not outsourced. I am the offender and the judge at the same time. How confusing is that to grasp the meaning, all right? And here's the last one. Human justice is based on expressed cruelty. Divine justice is not. It's based on the positive outcome. This is probably the most important thing here on the screen. Divine justice is based on positive outcome. Our justice is not in equilibrium, in balance. Divine justice is. Now we come back to that question. Considering that, divine justice looks at the positive outcome. Was the crucifixion of Jesus just and fair? And why? Well, I'm going to give you my opinion, because I'm not God to tell you the answer. My opinion is, If he had died as, let's just say, an old age, we wouldn't be here talking about him and thanking him for the teachings. It was just unfair because of the positive outcome. My opinion. Okay. So at times we are hit hard by divine justice. It just hit us just like that because we are trying to understand divine justice using human justice parameters. In the book Heaven and Hell, Allan Kardec publishes something very, very interesting. He calls the future code, the penal code of the future life. It's a set of 32 items, 32 articles. It's a penal code. We have our regular justice penal code. Let's just say, to make it easier, our penal code is like this. If you steal money, you go to jail 1 year. If you kill somebody, 10 years in jail. You see, I don't have to kill anybody to know that I'm going to have to spend 10 years in jail. It's already written on the law. I don't have to steal money to know that I'm going to spend 1 year in jail because it's already written on the law. This is exactly the same thing. And it tells me, as a spirit, if I do this moral thing, wrongdoing, there's a law for that. 32 articles. It's in the book. All we have to do is read and think about it. That's the moral law to its minimum and most condensed form. 32 articles, okay? And I want to close by bringing some idea here. Just imagine this. This is a soccer field, okay? And a stadium with the soccer field. Let's say you go to see a game. You go to watch a game, okay? And the game is going well. You're all happy and you're sitting somewhere, in the stadium. And then suddenly, one player, in disputing the ball with another player, they both go on the floor. They fell. And your idea is, well, that was not right. That was a foul play. And some people don't think it is. Well, let's say you're sitting here on this position A, and you look at that and you say, that was a foul play. Now, the guy sitting here looks at the very same thing at the very same time, and he says he wasn't. And the guy sitting here has a different opinion. And the guy sitting here has even a different opinion. And they all have different opinions. So how come, if the whole thing, all of us, 5, A, B, C, D, and E, look at the same thing at the same time, you see, it's so bad that the referee in the field 2 feet away, sometimes 3 feet away from the actual event, he has to request visual ID, right? He has to request a videotape of the scene so he can make up his mind. And he's 3 feet away. He still needs to do visual ID. That's a very common thing today. So why does it happen? You see, let's say I'm the guy A here, sitting here. So I go home after the game. My folks ask me, how was the game? Oh, it was this thing. Oh, the referee was wrong because he said it wasn't. And the guy sitting on position D goes to his house, and his folks will ask him, how was the game? It was nice. It was very good. No problem at all. Everything was really great. You see, the opinions are not the same. That's what we call fragmented truth. And why is that? Because we are observers. In this stadium here, when the game takes place, you have 60,000 observers with 60,000 different opinions, because every one of them is personally judging each thing that happens throughout the game. We are just observers. What we see are possibilities. We don't see the truth. We see possibilities. The problem is, me accepting other possibilities. When I tell you it was this, automatically I excluded any other possibility. So I shut myself within a firewall and I became the, speaker of the truth. And that's where trouble starts, because there are other possibilities. You can see here, there are 60,000 different possibilities. So fragmented truth is what makes us ultimately go against divine justice. It is what takes us down. And why is that? Because we think we have the truth. For us to have the truth on this particular game here, I would have to be present in every one of the 60,000 seats at the same time. Then I would have the actual truth. Then I could produce a divine outcome of what happened there. Am I capable of omnipresence? Not even close. I wouldn't have to know it all to be able to produce something fair in terms of justice. Do I have that ability? Not even close. I would have to be so powerful that I can do anything. Do I have that ability? I don't. So hopefully, with all this talk and all this, thing that we're trying to do here, if we can comprehend that there are aspects in the divine justice that are not part of our justice, hopefully there's, a light at the end of the tunnel for us. So we don't suffer that many times, we don't suffer that much, and we can collaborate instead of competing with God. We compete with God when it comes to justice. We want to show him badly that our justice is better than his. So sad. So that's what I wanted to bring to you today. So obviously we want to, hear what you have to say, a few things. And thanks so much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so we can discuss further down. Okay. Thanks so much.